Hey everybody, welcome to Friday Night Live with Becoming Bulletproof, the Bulletproof Life. I'm Thomas. I'm a certified high performance coach and your Bulletproof Life coach here with you on Friday night. It is 9 p.m. Eastern time in the U.S., wherever you are, however you are tuning in. Thank you so much for making us part of your evening or your weekend or kicking off the weekend for you. I'm excited about this subject tonight. It's one that's pretty heavy into our heart. Speaking of hearts, the heart wants what it wants, but it doesn't know what it needs. So yeah, let's get into it. Here's the hard truth. For many of you that may be rebuilding your lives after a life transition, maybe it's a relationship ended, maybe it's a career change, or maybe it's just that you're watching and you're an empty nester. You have a major life transition because your kids have left and you're looking for that new identity. Your heart is lying to you right now, wherever you are in this transition. Your heart is lying to you right now. That visceral pull toward what feels comfortable, familiar, emotionally soothing. It's not wisdom. It's your wounded self desperately trying to avoid more pain. At 40 or 50 years old, after losing a major piece of your identity, your heart's going to drag you back to what's familiar, that territory of comfort, even when it's toxic. That craving to reconnect with your ex, that's not love. That is fear of facing who you are without them. That urge to retreat into safety. It's not self-protection. It's resistance to becoming something new and something better. That voice that's telling you, I just want to feel better. Well, it's keeping you from the growth that you desperately need through this transitionary event in your life. The most dangerous words in midlife reinvention are not, I can't, they're I want. Because what you want right now might be the very thing that's preventing you from discovering who you are meant to become next. Well, I just want to welcome everybody again to this series on Friday Night Live. This is where we preview episodes that I am planning for my podcast, The Bulletproof Mindset. So I welcome any of you, wherever you're watching tonight, to settle in for the next few minutes. And for those of you who are navigating life's most disorienting transitions, I'm Thomas. I'm your host, a certified high performance coach. I am a former actor. I'm a writer and author. I'm a twice divorced dad of daughters who is just learning the hard way that rebuilding your life requires more than just following your feelings. Today's episode is going to speak directly to those of you who are between 35 and 55 who feel lost right now after a major life shift. Maybe you're recently divorced, questioning your worth, your identity. Perhaps you've lost a job or a career that defined you for decades. Maybe your kids have moved out, left home. You're wondering, who am I without being needed by them? Or maybe you're just simply facing that midlife realization that the path that you've been on isn't leading you where you thought it would. And now you're somewhere else and kind of lost without a compass. If you've ever been lying awake at night thinking, I don't know who I am anymore, and I'm afraid that I'll never feel confident again, you're in the right place. This episode is specifically for you. Okay. We're diving deep into why your heart wants what it wants, but doesn't know what it needs, and how this critical distinction will determine whether you stay stuck or create that exciting next chapter of your life. Let me be absolutely clear about what I said at the very beginning of this live. In the aftermath of a major identity shift, your emotional compass is compromised. Your heart will consistently pull you toward what feels safe, familiar, temporarily soothing, okay? But those very instincts, they can sabotage your reinvention. This isn't just philosophy, this is neuroscience, okay? When you lose a core piece of your identity in your 40s, your 50s, your brain enters a state similar to withdrawal, okay? The neural pathways that defined you for decades, they are now suddenly disrupted. Your brain, desperate to reduce this discomfort, will push you toward familiar patterns, even harmful ones, simply to restore a sense of normalcy. Glennon Doyle captures this in perfectly in the book Untamed. He says this: feelings are information, not directions. Wow. I mean, I'm a man, and typically men have a difficult time asking for directions. I'm wondering now about my own experience through this shift, and thinking that my feelings have clouded my directional compass enough, and that may have contributed to me not asking for directions in the middle of being lost. Yeah, and I'm not just talking about how to get from here to the nearest Lowe's or Home Depot. I'm talking about life. Your feelings after a major life transition will contain valuable data about your wounds, your fears, your conditioning, but they make terrible navigational tools for your future. According to research from the University of Virginia, people in midlife transition who make decisions based primarily on emotional comfort rather than growth potential, they're significantly more likely to report regret and stagnation 5 years later. Oftentimes, this is difficult in every aspect of life to really comprehend how this plays out. But think of it this way: when you are eating and you are changing your dietary habits, your work today isn't going to be felt or seen or noticed for at least a week or two, or maybe 3 or 4 weeks. So I am eating now, not for me to feel better today, but for me to feel better in a week or 2 weeks. The question isn't whether your feelings are valid. They absolutely are. This is not at all about suppress your heart. That's not what I'm saying tonight at all. Your feelings are valid and they need to be validated. The question is whether following those feelings will lead you toward confident, purposeful person that you want to become. Are these feelings that I'm having, if I act on them, are they leading me to that person that I want to become, or are they leading me to the person I was? Are they keeping me circling that same emotional territory, wondering why nothing ever changes? Hmm. So what happens if we don't fix this? What happens if you keep following what your heart wants without discerning what it actually needs? I've seen this play out a hundred times with clients in that I have in midlife transition, and the consequences are devastating. Okay, the identity vacuum spirals. Okay, nature abhors a vacuum, especially in identity. When you lose a core role, spouse, career, active parent, okay, without intentionally creating something new, you don't just stay neutral, you actively regress. I've watched accomplished professionals who've lost their job at 50 become shells of themselves within weeks or months because they followed their heart's desire for comfort rather than embracing the discomfort of reinvention. There's also the false start syndrome. This is particularly painful to witness. And if you have witnessed it, just listen to this. You probably know someone in your life that's gone through this. All right. So you gather your courage, you take a step forward, maybe dating again, maybe starting a new business, maybe exploring a new passion. But because you're following your wants, your emotional soothing, rather than your needs, genuine growth, okay, you sabotage yourself. Every false start erodes your confidence further and further until you stop trying altogether, convinced this is just who I am now. It is who it is. I am who I am. It is what it is. We just accept that. That, my friends, is the false start syndrome. There's also the time acceleration effect. Okay. Yeah, that's my terminology, but here we go. This is the most cruel part of midlife transition. When you're stuck following emotional comfort over growth, time doesn't just pass, it accelerates. I had a 55-year-old client suddenly realize that they've spent 5 years in emotional limbo, still defining themselves by a loss that happened half a decade ago. At this stage of life, 5 years isn't something that you can casually write off. You're 55 years old. In 5 years, I'm going to be 60. In five more, I'm going to be 65. It's not like I've got, I'm at 21 and I've got the next 50 years ahead of me. I can't write that time off. And then there's the relationship replacement trap. Okay. Your heart seeking comfort will push you to replace what you've lost rather than reinvent yourself. Okay. After divorce, it will drive you toward a relationship that feels familiar, often with that same toxic pattern that you had before. After career loss, it may push you to recreate your old role rather than explore a new possibility somewhere else and learn a new trade. After your kids leave, your empty nesters, okay, it tempts you to find new people to care for rather than discovering who am I now that I am not needed anymore. Michael, client, he's 48, 49 years old. He lost both his 20-year marriage and his executive position that he held for 12 years within 6 months of each other. Double whammy. His heart wanted the comfort of familiarity and validation, so he immediately jumped into dating a younger woman, and he took the first job offered him, which was several steps down from his previous role. Okay. The relationship quickly became a crutch, and uninspiring job eroded his self-image further. It wasn't until he hit rock bottom, realizing that he'd spent 2 full years trying to numb the pain rather than processing it, facing it, that he finally recognized the difference between what his heart wanted, the escape from discomfort, and what it needed. It just needed space to grieve, to rebuild his identity, to discover his new purpose. I want to take a minute to invite you to join, if you haven't already, my free community online. It's called Becoming Bulletproof. This is not just another support group. It's specifically designed for men and women who are navigating major identity shifts that want to build something meaningful from these pieces, from these ashes. What makes this community different is our focus on distinguishing between emotional wants and genuine needs during this transition. Every day, we will try and share, and I'll tell you that the group is growing. It is new. So we're working on rediscovering our identity and building confidence and significant growth through loss, okay, in the wake of it. Whether you are struggling after a divorce or career change, empty nesting, just midlife crisis, or you just feel stuck, it's time to reinvent your identity and rediscover who you are. The link for this is in the bio of wherever you are watching, but I'll say it right here. It is becomingbulletproof.info/resources. Becomingbulletproof.info/resources. Join today. It's free. It's a free group. And this broadcast, among others, we share a lot of value and we hold each other up. And it's a great place to be. All right. I want to share a little bit of my personal journey through this subject here. Something that it's deeply personal, illustrates exactly the tension between wants and needs. Okay. So after my second divorce, I was completely disoriented for over 2 decades. Okay. My identity had been built around being a husband and a father. And I had 2 marriages. I've been divorced twice. Now, with my daughters, only with me part of the time, my marriage over, I was utterly lost. The question is, who am I now? I have always bounced back fast from loss and from challenge and discouragement and mistakes falling flat on my face. But this was visceral. It consumed me physically and mentally day and night for months. My heart desperately wanted comfort and validation. I craved that familiarity of being in a relationship, being needed by someone. And within a few months of my second divorce, I felt myself downloading and just kind of being casually connected with dating apps. And I did join a support group, a couple of them actually online, for divorced men. Actually had several people in one of those groups, one of those mixed groups, as well as dating apps that I saw could be potential rebound relationships. But I even contemplated reaching out to my ex, who we actually did have a fairly functional relationship, and we still do. But I convinced myself in those early days that I was putting myself out there and I was moving forward. But in reality, I was really just trying to escape the terrifying emptiness of facing myself in the silence that I could not isolate myself from. We can't escape our own heart, right? We can't escape our own conscience and our own memory. I remember sitting in my too quiet house one night, swiping through social media somewhere, while ignoring the stack of personal development books that I bought. I was exhausted from pretending to be fine at work, with my girls, with my family, resentful about my ex and her new life, uh, completely disconnected from any sense of purpose. That's when it hit me. I wasn't moving forward at all. I was desperately trying to recreate what I'd lost rather than building something new. What my heart wanted was to fill the void immediately with another relationship, a distraction, anything to avoid the pain of reinvention. But what it needed was the very discomfort I was avoiding, the solitude, the self examination, the patience to discover who I could become. Making this distinction changed everything. I deleted the dating apps, didn't need them anymore. I established firm boundaries with my ex that we're still working on and building on today, years later. I committed to 6 months of being intentionally single, not out of bitterness, but to create a space for genuine growth. And I started seeing a therapist. I joined a men's focus group on this subject, and uh, I reconnected with passions and activities that I had abandoned for years. Those 6 months, often brutal, uncomfortable. There were nights I stared at the ceiling until dawn, questioning every decision I'd ever made. There were weekends when my daughters were with their respective mothers that I felt endless. There were moments that I was absolutely certain that I had made a huge mistake in choosing growth over comfort. But slowly, Something remarkable started to happen as I stopped chasing what I wanted and I started giving myself permission to accept what I needed. I began to rediscover parts of myself that I'd forgotten even existed. My creativity returned. I started writing again. My energy increased. I started getting in shape. And over the course of the next 7 months, I lost over 80 pounds. My relationships with both of my daughters started to deepen and the connection grew because I was finally emotionally present rather than constantly distracted by my own need for validation. Most importantly, I developed a relationship with myself that wasn't dependent on an external role. I discovered that I could be worthy, purposeful, and happy. Yeah, happy. Not because I was somebody's husband, not because I was somebody's father, not because I was needed, but because simply I was intentionally creating a life aligned with my values, my moral compass. This wasn't a linear journey. There were setbacks, there were moments of weakness. But the distinction between following my heart's wants versus its needs became my north star, my compass. And when I eventually did start dating again, it wasn't from a place of emptiness needing to be filled, but from a place of wholeness, seeking a genuine connection and wanting to be shared. If you're in that disorienting space of transition right now, if you've lost a piece of your identity and you're desperate for that normal feeling again, I need you to hear this. The comfort of your heart wants will keep you stuck. The comfort your heart wants will keep you stuck. The growth that it needs will set you free. So I'm going to give you 3 transition points. You can write these down. I think these will give you a little bit of a roadmap in order to get more to the growth side than the comfort side. Okay. Point number 1, your desires are often shaped by your deepest wounds, not your highest potential. Not everything that feels good is good for you. I probably read that in a million different versions. But in midlife transition, your strongest desires are rarely pointing you toward growth. They're pointing you toward pain relief. Nobody wants to be in pain, least of all your heart. This distinction is critical if you want to move forward rather than circle the same emotional territorial drain. Your brain is wired to protect you from psychological discomfort just as aggressively as it protects you from physical pain. When a core piece of your identity is threatened or lost, your desires become primarily focused on reducing that distress, not on facilitating growth. So, I want you to try a practical step here. I'm going to call this the desire discernment exercise. When you feel a strong emotional pull towards something like a relationship, a job, a behavior, I want you to ask yourself this: is this desire pulling me toward growth or away from pain? If it's primarily about avoiding discomfort, it's likely a want masquerading as a need. Write down those 3 growth oriented alternatives that might feel better to better serve you in your reinvention, even if they don't feel really comfortable right now. Okay. Point number 2, temporary discomfort is the price of lasting transformation. No pain, no gain. It's quite true. Growth begins at the end of your comfort zone. That's Neil Donald Walsh. This quote, I mean, it becomes a cliche, but it contains so much truth, profound fact for those navigating midlife transition. Your heart seeking comfort, it's going to resist the very experiences that lead to reinvention. At this stage of life, after decades of establishing patterns and identities, growth requires not just stepping outside your comfort zone, but something dismantling it entirely. This creates a paradox. The very discomfort your heart wants to avoid is precisely what it needs to transform. One example of this is a client of mine, James. He's 49, 50 now. He found himself suddenly divorced after his wife of 21 years left him. His heart wanted the comfort of routine, familiarity. So he maintained the same schedule, ate at the same restaurants, and even kept his ex wife's belongings exactly as she had left them. His breakthrough came when he forced himself to do one uncomfortable thing every day: eating alone at a new restaurant, rearranging the furniture, joining a social group where he knew absolutely nobody. Each act, which was small, act of embracing discomfort gradually expanded his capacity for reinvention. In 6 short months, he had developed new friendships, discovered new interests, begun to create an identity independent of his marriage. He found who he was outside of that marriage, and he found an instant happiness. This is the next practical step I want you guys to think about: the discomfort curriculum, okay? Create a specific plan to systematically expose yourself to growth-oriented discomfort. Start small, one minor stretch every day, then gradually increase that challenge. Track your progress, not just how comfortable you feel, but by how your capacity for handling that uncertainty, how it expands. This deliberately rewires your brain to associate discomfort with growth rather than a threat. All right, point number 3. Identity reconstruction requires both demolition and architecture. Self-care is giving the world the best of you, not what's left. This quote highlights that's Katie Reed, by the way. This quote highlights a critical truth about midlife reinvention. You cannot build a new identity while you're desperately clinging to the remains of the old one. Many people in transition make the mistake of trying to add new elements to their life without first creating space, emotional, psychological, sometimes physical space for genuine transformation. That also includes time. Your heart, fearing the emptiness, will resist this necessary demolition. But just as you cannot build a new structure without first clearing the ground, you can't create a new identity without first releasing the aspects of the old. Lisa, another client of mine, had dedicated 20 years to raising her children. When her youngest left for college, she experienced a profound identity crisis, emptiness. Her heart wanted to maintain her role as a primary caregiver. So, calling her children multiple times every day, inserting herself into their college experience, even considering moving closer to the campus they were on. Her transformation began when she recognized that her heart's desire to maintain her caregiving identity was preventing her from discovering who she could be beyond them, beyond motherhood. She established healthier boundaries with her adult children, deliberately created space in her life. That's what boundaries are, guys. It's not everything we can't do. It's deliberately creating the capacity of space for you to exist, not just for them to exist. Physical space, repurposing. She repurposed her children's rooms. Emotional space by limiting check-ins, times that she texted or called them. Temporal space by blocking off hours previously dedicated to caretaking and doing something creative with it. This created a vacuum necessary for new interests to emerge and new identities to form. Within a year, she discovered a person she never knew existed. A passion for environmental advocacy was formed, developing new friendships that she did independent of her identity as a mother. And she established a much healthier relationship with her adult children based on that mutual respect rather than dependency. So here's the last practical step: the identity inventory. Make 3 lists. Okay. The first list, identities I've lost. The second list, identities I'm clinging to. And the third list, identities I want to develop. For each item on the clinging to list, I want you to identify one concrete step to create space by loosening your grip a little bit on that identity. For each item on the want to develop list, I want you to identify one small action you can take this week to begin cultivating an aspect of yourself that you haven't before. Review and update this inventory every month as your sense of self evolves. And I promise you, you probably won't need more than a month to see the drastic transformation that you're going to have. So if you're standing at a crossroads of who you were and who you're becoming, here's what I want you to do next. Okay. First, download my free book, The Bulletproof Mindset. It's packed full of step by step and give you that clarity of what's going on in our minds to help us build that confidence to take that first, second, third step forward. Next, again, I want you to join our Becoming Bulletproof community, where we dig into topics like this, where we start supporting each other, where we're learning more and more and more how to redefine that new identity every day, reinvent it. You'll find both of those links are at the same link I mentioned earlier, becomingbulletproof.info/resources. And you can find both of those resources there. But maybe you are on this broadcast and you are thinking, you know what? Every single thing that I heard tonight is touching a nerve with me. There's no reason why you have to walk that path by yourself. One of the free resources that we offer in that same link is a breakthrough call. This is what we do. This is what we do with men and women just like you every single day who are struggling with just being stuck. Maybe it's you following your heart wants a little bit too much. Maybe it's you're lacking clarity in your life. Maybe it's your energy levels and you just seem exhausted all the time. Maybe it's self-confidence. Maybe it's a little bit of all of them. You can't take those steps oftentimes when you don't know what steps to take. So that's what we do. Book a free breakthrough call. The link to do that is also at that same link, becomingbulletproof.info/resources. And let's see what that strategy, that roadmap looks like together. So thank you so much for spending this time with me this evening for Friday Night Live. If you are in the midst of reinventing yourself after a life transition, any significant transition, remember this, okay? Your heart wants what it wants, but it doesn't know what it needs. The path to rediscovering your identity and rebuilding your confidence isn't about following what feels good right now. It's about having the courage to give yourself what you need right now, even when that's uncomfortable. Okay. You haven't lost yourself permanently. You're just in the space between identities. And that space, while disorienting, is also filled with extraordinary potential. Don't rush through it, seeking comfort. Instead, sit with it. Use it as a foundation for building something better than what came before. All right. So until next time, stay strong, stay courageous, stay curious about who you are becoming. And remember this, the most bulletproof people aren't those who avoid life's hits. They're those who use them to build the armor they need to become stronger. All right. So have a great weekend. Stay strong, stay free, and stay bulletproof. Thank you guys, everybody, and have a great weekend. Take care.